Film tonight is very, very special. It's called Poisoning Paradise by Keely Brosnan and Teresa Tico. And we would like to have the filmmaker, Keely, could you please come out here and introduce your film?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. Thank you very much. I am deeply proud to be with you all here tonight. And I'm deeply proud because of my wife who stands beside me here and who comes from this neck of the woods. And we got here a little late due to traffic, but this beautiful woman who's been my wife and partner for 25 years, and I watched her as a young woman and still a whip of a lass growing up and living in this community, and her environmental work has been truly outstanding and passionate and articulate, and she's walked the walk and talked the walk for so many years. And so this film is deeply personal on many levels, that level of which I speak, and also living in Kauai, where we've been for the last 16 years, in this beautiful paradise, and hearing certain stories, and Keely being a passionate environmentalist, took up this story, and I have watched it grow over the last 2.5 years now, and I make my films, I see them once and that's it. I don't want to see it again, but I've seen this film so many times now over the years, and it's just, it's been glorious to watch the articulation of and command of storytelling with a heart about something which is deeply personal to both of us, and that is about the food we eat and the air we breathe and our children and our children's children. And I guess being an activist, being an environmentalist, anyway, I give you my darling wife, Keely, and her movie, Poisoning Paradise.
Thank you. Just a heartfelt thanks to everybody for coming out on this beautiful day to see the film. As my husband Pierce said, I am an Orange County girl. I was raised in Newport and Huntington Beach. I went to public school here, and we had an incredible environmental science program that nurtured and fostered my environmental activism throughout my entire life. I think it's really important that we have these kinds of classes for children. The result being that I became an environmental journalist for network television. I've worked for many years in the philanthropy sector, and I've gone back to work now that my children are grown. This is my first film. I'm very proud of it. It's deeply personal. It's about a place that I love and people that I love, and the story was, in my mind, something that urgently needed to be told. I'll be here after the film if you want to stick around and you have any questions for Q&A. And without further ado, I hope you enjoy the film. Thank you again for coming out.
My mind, as I was watching this film, I was outraged. These things are happening in beautiful Hawaii, the island of Kauai. And everybody, it's a tourist favorite. Everybody wants to go there. And then all of a sudden it's like, maybe not, after watching this film. You as an environmentalist, you worked as an environmental reporter for ABC, for the home show, and you've won a lot of awards, and you've always been an environmentalist. Could you talk a little bit about what made you make this particular film with so much passion, and you've packed so much information in it? Could you just talk about the whole process of how this film came about?
Sure. Thank you for your wonderful support of our film. This was really an organic, no pun intended, homegrown production, and it started with a swim and my neighbor. And we had been talking about the bill and the bill not passing, and we thought we really should tell the story. She said, I want to make a film about Bill 2491, and that was the genesis of it. So it started small, and it started with the heart of the film, which you saw, the protest movement, the march footage. It started with a desire to tell the story of the bill and why we needed the bill. And the film just grew exponentially from there. It was really important to me to bring the science to the film. I think it's essential if people are on the fence about genetically modified organisms and about that technology. I hope that the film helps debunk some of the myths, and I hope that it helps you understand that GE, genetic engineering, is the technology, and that a GMO is the product, because a lot of people seem confused about that. And I think the industry thrives on that confusion. So Terry and I set about working on this film. She conducted the interviews with the local people, Malia Chun, Jim and John, who you first meet in the film. And then I handled the scientific experts, the lawyers, the doctors. Fern, who I would consider the leading lady of the film, she ran for office and sadly lost that bill, but I think she'll be back out after 2018 to run again. We really do feel that if we're going to change what's happening on the islands, we're going to have to do it politically. There's really no other way. Our next election is in 2018, and I'm hoping that this film, which you've seen today, it's a rough cut. It's not finished yet, but we're very close. We plan on putting this film out just before the election so we can help influence the election, so we can help people understand what's at stake. We have to start voting in politicians that understand that the environment is a bipartisan issue. It knows no side. It's not Democratic, it's not Republican. It's humanity. It's our home, and it's the only home that we have. And so while I'm certainly in no way a socialist, I think that it's really important that we start to understand that our dollar really represents purchasing power, and it reflects what our values are and what's important to us. And I certainly think that clean air and clean water and a clean environment and a healthy ecosystem are at the top of the list of quality of life for everyone. The story continued to evolve as the politics evolved. So we made this film. It originally came in at 58 minutes. It was accepted into the Hawaiian International Film Festival to a very warm reception. We expanded the film to 1 hour to include more political updates on the bill, because when we first made the bill, the bill was pending and we hadn't lost yet. Then we had to update the film and show how we lost everything. And you saw that GMOs are allowed to plow ahead. It was a huge victory for the agrochemical companies. And I'm really sorry to tell you that at this moment, it's reported that they are closing all their operations on the island of Molokai, and they are moving them to Kauai. So instead of diminishing the potential effects of this industry, they are actually expanding them. And I find that deeply saddening and distressing. But I think the film has a powerful message, and I think that if people are receptive to it and that we continue to play at festivals and we get a wide release, which is what we're expecting through our distributor, that we're going to start educating people. And it's really going to take every single one of you in this audience and everyone else that sees it to help us. You heard Josh, actually it was Chris, who said that for every person that stands up, there's a multiplier effect. And I think that multiplier effect is really important. So the governor should hear from you, the Department of Tourism should hear from you, and I think that your purchasing dollar is important. If we're juxtaposing a $200 million a year industry to the $15 billion a year that are spent on tourism, and tourism is the heart and soul of the Hawaiian economy, every one of you has the power to help affect the change that we need to have. I recently received some guidance from one of the elders. They call them kahunas. They're very powerful Hawaiian spiritual leaders. And what he said was that this kind of experimentation doesn't belong in Hawaii. They're there because we have 3 or 4 growing seasons a year and plentiful water. But he said that this kind of experimentation should be taking place where land is plentiful
and there's a diminished population so that it's not affecting directly populations of people. He was suggesting places like Nevada, and I'm sure Nevada doesn't want this there either. Sylvia Earle, one of the experts in the film, said that if you are going to conduct these kind of experiments, they should be enclosed systems. It should not be open air where you're making the world your laboratory, the world susceptible to whatever it is you're putting into it. My biggest fear is that there's generation after generation right now, children that are being exposed to these chemicals, and the long-term, long-range effects are acute. According to some of the scientists in the film who are at the top of their fields, this changes the architecture of your brain. Being exposed to chlorpyrifos and organophosphates literally changes the architecture of your brain. And Senator Josh Green, who's also a physician and works in the emergency rooms, has said that they can't mitigate this damage, that science and medicine hasn't evolved far enough to undo that kind of damage. You can't change the architecture of the brain. If something's happened at age 1 or 2 or 3, there's no way for science to diminish that.
Wow.
So we're putting a generation of children, in my opinion, at risk. And it's not just my opinion, it's really all of the people that are in this film. I mean, it's an important film, and I think in the sense that these people have responded in their own narrative. And so it's really hard to make a film that doesn't have a narration. You know, like when Michael Moore makes a film, he's always telling you, and then we went here and we did this. We don't have that in this film. We let every single person that's interviewed move this story forward, and they all have a lot to say. So I think...
Which is even harder.
Well, that's what I was going to say. You're right. There's a lot of information for you to assimilate in this film, and we're expecting a lot of you as an audience. And a lot of people have told me they have to watch it more than once. Others have said they've gone online to look for this information and to find the articles. It was my job as a journalist to string all these articles and news stories together, and that's what I tried to do. You know, you can look at a pearl sitting on the table, but if you string a pearl and another pearl together, pretty soon you have a necklace, and it's a more meaningful statement. And that's what I was trying to do, was really string all this information together so I could tell you the story.
Yeah, I just want to open the
Two things. One, it is linked, isn't it, also to the challenge of the way we fund politics, to change the culture of
Money and politics,
finance.
yes.
And the next generation, let we old fogies die out, and the younger people are going to be smarter, and especially if if we can change the money.
Citizens United, we have to overturn Citizens United, yes, you're absolutely right. That's a big start. And I do agree with you, we need 21st century minds to solve these 21st century problems. This isn't sustainable agriculture. There's so many other ways that we can go about it. But we're going to have to regenerate that soil because it's laden with pesticides. And you heard that it's been going on for a long time in Hawaii. It was used for all kinds of experimental pesticides. And then, of course, there's the DDT in the pineapple fields and other issues where they tested Agent Orange before they went to Vietnam. I think that the earth has incredible regenerative powers. And I think that if we move toward that more sustainable future in agriculture, that we will be successful. I mean, even vertical gardening alone is something that we could be exploring for so many of our crops. So I don't think we need this type of technology to feed the world. I think that's a misnomer. And I think in the long run, by poisoning everything, including the good bugs and the good bacteria and the mycelium, we're going to create problems for ourselves, like super weeds that we can't even address anymore. Plus, bet on an insect in nature to evolve. So we're also going to have pests that are, just in a few generations, they will be resistant to these herbicides.
Have you been a victim of the bad guys trying to stop you from doing?
No, No, but I will tell you I was a victim of having a lot of hives and rashes when I lived on the island, and I didn't know why. I moved there for almost a 3-year period while my children were small, and I started breaking out in hives, and it was really serious. And I went to all kinds of specialists and allergists to find out what it was, and nobody could tell me. And I finally found a doctor who was both Eastern and Western medicine. And he said, you've been exposed to chemicals. You've been exposed to glyphosate, to Roundup in your rural neighborhoods. So that's when I first started really paying attention. Because I don't use poison, I garden organically, and I try to avoid conventional produce, but I certainly don't use it on my garden or in my yard. And that was eye-opening for me.
Sure.
Any other questions?
Any other questions? Yes. Yes, up there.
Yeah, I just want to say, I enjoyed your film very much, and I want to let you know that you changed my mind about GMOs.
Thank you. Wow.
I didn't know the human cost of GMOs until I saw your film. So I hope you get it out everywhere.
Thank you. Gosh, that gave me chills. I really, really appreciate that. I'm always startled by the argument that we need this technology to feed starving children in Africa, and I'm thinking to myself, well, why do we have to poison little Hawaiian kids to make this technology, or to develop this technology? It doesn't make sense to me. I think there's other ways to go about it, but I really appreciate that comment, and I'm hoping that the science, I worry it's a little bit long, and I'm hoping that it doesn't slow the film down, but I want you to understand what's at stake, the respiratory issues, the brain, the neurotoxins to the brain disorders, the development of the brain that's at stake. There are a lot of really serious issues that are affecting the population and the birth defects. So I think it's relevant, and I think we have to ask at what cost, and also that we import 90% of our food to the islands. We should be growing our own food and be sustainable, because should we have a disaster like Hurricane Iniki, we would only have about 6 days of a food supply on island. So this really is something that has to be addressed, and I feel inspired by the audiences and people like you that I meet, and I'm hoping that all of you feel inspired to let them know your thoughts after you see the film.
One more question. Yes.
Yes. So on the flip side of this, are you prepared legally for what these corporations, once they see your film, are probably going to come after you with? I know that's a horrible question, and I'm just playing devil's advocate.
I think we all have to speak up right now.
Yes.
I think this is a time in our history and a time in our politics, a time in the world where we can't remain silent anymore. We really all are being called on to be politically engaged, politically active. I don't want to dwell in that place of fear. We do have lawyers that are vetting the film, and I want to put my best foot forward. I want to make sure that what we say in the film is accurate, and I'm hoping that, I'd like to think that these are good people doing bad things. That's how I'd like to think of it. They're good people doing bad things for money, and maybe, just maybe, we can turn the tide on that. Anybody else? One more?
Oscar?
Yeah, it's really, I just want to say you did a wonderful job with the film. Information, it was great. Thank you for your passion and your courage in building awareness. I know, just being a resident of Irvine for 16 years, there's a group of moms that have been very concerned when they're taking their kids to their schools, and they see these little signs on the grass that say pesticides, and they know that their kids in elementary school level as well as middle school and high school, they're playing sports, they're playing on the playgrounds, and this is everywhere. So just know, for me, it's like I'm going to let them know that a movie like this is out, so then they can build more awareness. But I mean, the magnitude of what's happening over there, I had no idea. So thank you for doing that.
You're right, thank you. I think what's happening in Kauai is just a microcosm of what's happening around the country, and obviously what's happening around the world. I don't think we should have Roundup. if it was up to me, I would ban Roundup. I don't think that's a good product. And I don't think anybody really knew for the longest time that it was so toxic. And there are efforts right now in Europe to ban it. There are a lot of mothers and others who are trying. I mean, we shouldn't have it around our schools. California, I think, has the strongest, most stringent environmental laws for buffer zones around schools, but it's also the farm workers, right, because they're exposed to this. But no, it doesn't belong in our parks. It doesn't belong around aquatic environments. It shouldn't be sprayed along coastlines, and I don't think it belongs in our food supply. So I don't know where else we'd use it.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say one last thought. Your film was very well done in the sense that it presented the problem at the beginning, and then it presented the why, the causes, and then at the end, it was very upbeat. It showed us, it really showed all the odds that we were up against, but it presented an upbeat ending where there is hope. As long as we unite and work together, we can defeat, all the corporations.
That is true.
Yeah, thank you very, very much. Put your hands together.